What is up, guys? Back with another off-the-cuff review. Today we're talking about the first 5 episodes of the new animated series Batman Caped Crusader. This is the spiritual successor to the original Batman the Animated Series from the 90s. It's got one half of its original creators with Bruce Timm coming in. This thing has some huge producers to its name like J.J. Abrams and Matt Reeves. A lot of hype around this. The whole thing dropped on Amazon earlier this week. So today we're going to talk about the first half, which I watched basically in one sitting. So if you're going into this expecting Batman the Animated Series all over again, it's not quite that. The tone is similar to that, but it's much more focused on the noir and detective aspects of it. The aesthetics are all late 30s, early 40s, Golden Age era Batman, and it's leaning a little bit more into the mature presentation as opposed to some of the previous Batman animated shows. Overall, I enjoyed it. It's more brutal and adult than the original DC animated universe that a lot of us grew up on, but only by a few notches. This thing could play on Adult Swim right now, but probably not on a Cartoon Network afternoon block, if that makes sense. Watching this feels like when a new author takes over a big comic book title. You know what character settings and ideas they have to work with right off the bat? It's all a matter of where and how they're going to use them. It feels like it's trying to find its footing with these first 5 episodes, but people tend to forget this. It took a while for the animated series to find its groove too. People kind of memory hole the awkwardness of that first season, and this honestly falls into that same trap, which could mean great things are down the line, but it's what we have to work with right now. This Batman is still in his urban legend stage. He's not making mistakes left and right like it's year one, and he's got a better handle on the balance between being Batman and Bruce Wayne than Robert Pattinson did in The Batman. But from the start, he has no relationship with Jim Gordon. Most criminals think he's a myth, but it's not like this is his first night. There's no scene of Alfred being shocked at the mere sight of him putting on the cowl. Speaking of which, this Batman is much more reserved to both the audience and the characters around him. He treats Alfred more like an employee than a surrogate father. Hearing him blow off any attempt at Alfred's usual witty humor and calling him Pennyworth feels like I'm watching a grown-up Damien. I'm not saying he's too stiff, but it feels like exploring his character and watching him develop into a more well-rounded person is going to be a show-long arc. To put it bluntly, this is not Conroy's Batman, not even the early version of him. Outside of the aesthetics, the biggest thing that makes this feel like early Batman are the smaller stakes. Penguin's big scheme is just to fire off a really big gun. Clayface is terrorizing a film production. Catwoman is robbing an art exhibit. Firebug is just burning down one apartment complex. And Harley Quinn is manipulating rich men inside of a mansion. Nothing has a big citywide threat yet, and the big hitters like Joker, Riddler, Bane, Ra's al Ghul, none of them are here yet. And I doubt they will be for a while. Let's dive into those villains a little deeper. First up is Penguin, and they've gender-swapped him to be Oswalda Cobblepot. I'm honestly okay with this. Penguin is one of those villains where there's not really a definitive take on him. If you lined up all the major versions from adaptations, so that's Danny DeVito, both versions from the animated series, the ones from the Arkham games and the Telltale games, the comedic relief character from the Batman cartoon, and most recently Colin Farrell, the only similarities you'd get would be a handful of aesthetic choices. He's really a villain you can try to do anything with, so making him a ruthless matriarch, it worked for me. Next up is Clayface, and I think it's funny how even though there's been like 8 different versions of this character in the comics, we always go back to Basil Carlo as the disgruntled actor. I like how his base form is kind of like a redesign of Scarecrow from the new Batman adventures, and the mystery around him is well done, but it's odd seeing one of the most sci-fi based villains from Batman's Rogues Gallery have his big confrontation with bats and it really just be a fist fight. Episode 3 sees Christina Ricci as Catwoman rocking her Golden Age look. We get the usual Bat-Cat flirtation, but not much else. Episode 4 is Tom Kenny playing Firebug, and he's really the first villain that fits into the criminally insane category. And I loved how they show him and how he sees the world being at peace when everything is on fire. This is also our first big episode where we see Detectives Bullock and Flass be straight up murderous villains as opposed to just your standard crooked cop types, and I feel like that's going to be a really interesting thread to follow throughout the season. And in episode 5, we get the highly anticipated reimagining of Harley Quinn, this time fully operating on her own as she uses her abilities as a therapist to psychologically break her patients into basically becoming her minions. It's pretty twisted, and I hope her disappearance at the end of the episode means she'll be a recurring villain throughout the show. She's also the only villain so far that was introduced in earlier episodes, and we finally get the payoff later. She's in episodes 3 and 4 basically as a normal person, so you don't really see the big twist coming. I thought that was fun. Which reminds me, it seems like this show is mostly going to stick to being episodic. I'm okay with that. I wish more superhero shows nowadays would go that route. Looking at you, Marvel. But outside of the 3-episode Harley arc, there's not much in the way of a season-long story outside of Batman's relationship with the GCPD. As for the voice cast, this thing is loaded to the brim with recognizable voice actors. We've got 2 former Batmen in Diedrich Bader and Roger Craig Smith. Bader does a great Harvey Dent, though it's an interesting choice to make him a sleazeball right out of the gate. John DiMaggio is perfect casting as Bullock, Jamie Chung is haunting as Harley Quinn, and it's fun being able to catch recognizable actors like Yuri Lowenthal, Josh Keaton, David Krumholtz, and Jason Marsden in smaller roles. And then there's Hamish Linklater as Batman, and he's fine. He's no Kevin Conroy, but A, who the hell is? And B, he's still an improvement from some of the other recent Batman actors like Jason O'Mara. The switch between his Batman and Bruce Wayne voices is subtle, and I appreciate that he's not doing the Christian Bale growl when he puts on the mask, but 5 episodes in, I'm still getting used to it. Overall, this first half of the season was pretty decent. I wish this wasn't all dropped at once, and I feel like figuring out where this fits in the animated Batman hierarchy is gonna take a while, but it's a promising start. I feel like I would have been more forgiving if this had come out a few years back when superhero animation was an absolute wasteland. But nowadays we've got Invincible, My Adventures with Superman, Harley Quinn, and that Kite Man spinoff, which I've also been keeping up with and is pretty good. This hasn't reached the level of any of those shows yet, but I'm obviously gonna stick with it and see how it evolves. Stay tuned for my review of the season's second half next week, and thanks for watching.